The light in the grand chamber of the Xylo's concordance was a living thing, a symphony of liquid gold and crystalline sapphire that flowed from the vaulted, star-strewn ceiling. It cascaded down pillars of spun silicon that resonated with the low, anxious hum of the assembled delegates, their thoughts and fears given form in the subtle vibrations that shivered through the polished obsidian floor. High Counselor Valerius stood at the heart of this confluence, his own crystalline form absorbing the ambient light, refracting the tension into 1,000 fractured rainbows within his core. For cycles, this chamber had been a bastion of serene logic and measured debate, the nexus of 1,000 star systems bound by a covenant of peace and mutual understanding. Now it was a tomb of silence, punctuated by the sharp, discordant chimes of rising panic. The silence was the true enemy, for it held the shape of the entity they dared not name but could not ignore, the Cathar Imperium, the Crimson Tide. They were a force of pure, unreasoning consumption. Their ships were not forged but grown, monstrous biological leviathans that bled crimson plasma and devoured entire worlds, leaving behind only scoured rock and the lingering echo of screams. The Concordance, a sophisticated and ancient coalition of dozens of species, had believed its advanced technology and diplomatic prowess made it inviolable. They had been wrong. The Cathar did not negotiate. They did not reason. They simply advanced, a galactic plague of gnashing hunger, and the Concordance's meticulously crafted fleets, designed for elegant deterrence and precise surgical strikes, shattered against the Imperium's sheer, brutal mass. The Glypton delegate, a being of faceted obsidian whose species communicated through percussive gestures and guttural pronouncements, slammed a heavy appendage on his console. The sound was a crack of thunder in the hallowed quiet. The outer rim is lost. The Viridian colonies are dark. The Cathar advance unchecked. We have debated, we have strategized, we have mourned. The time for deliberation is over. We must commit the Grand Armada. We must meet them with overwhelming force. Burn them from our space, whatever the cost. The sentiment rippled through the chamber, a wave of desperate assent. The cost. Valerius knew what the Glypton meant. The Grand Armada was not a tool of war. It was an instrument of annihilation, a collection of planet breakers and star extinguishers held in reserve for threats of a cosmic, not political, nature. To unleash it was to accept a level of self-inflicted destruction that might poison entire sectors for millennia. It was an act of galactic suicide to cure a terminal illness. He shimmered his descent, a soft cascade of silver light pulsing from his form. And what becomes of us then, delegate? We survive, perhaps, but as a lesser version of ourselves. A civilization defined not by the peace we built, but by the fire we unleashed. We would become a reflection of the very monster we seek to destroy. Philosophy will not shield our nesting worlds, High Counselor, the Glypton rumbled, his facets darkening with impatience. Logic will not feed the refugee fleets. The Cathar are a force of nature. One does not reason with a supernova. It was then that the Vex, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering containment field, floated towards the center of the chamber. Its voice was a chorus of synthesized tones, cold and bereft of emotion, yet it carried an undeniable weight. There is another variable. A new element has entered the equation. The Vex projected a holographic map into the center of the room. It showed the Crimson Tide's inexorable advance, a bleeding wound on the galactic chart. But on the very periphery, in a sector of unclaimed, forgotten stars, a new symbol had appeared. It was small, insignificant, and it pulsed with an energy signature unlike any the Concordance had ever catalogued. Designation: human, a bipedal, carbon-based species from a single high-gravity world. Their expansion has been erratic, tentative. They have established a handful of outposts, seemingly at random. Their technology registers as primitive. Fission-based power, rudimentary kinetic weapons, crude FTL drives that tier at the fabric of spacetime. They are, by all metrics, a nascent and unremarkable civilization. The Glypton delegate scoffed, a grinding sound of stone on stone. A distraction, prey for the Cathar, nothing more. Their presence is irrelevant. Not irrelevant, the Vex corrected, its tone unwavering. Their primary colony, a world they call Kepler 186F, lies directly in the Cathar's projected path. The Imperium will reach them within one cycle. However, their communications are anomalous. The Vex isolated a stream of data, and the chamber was filled with a chaotic torrent of sound and light. It was a cacophony of languages, music, images, fragments of art, scientific formulas, and emotional broadcasts. It was utterly unfiltered, a torrent of a species' entire consciousness flung into the void. They transmit everything, their history, their art, their philosophies, their fears. It is a display of profound vulnerability or profound arrogance. We cannot yet discern which. Valerius felt a strange resonance within his core, a flicker of something that was not quite hope, but a deep and unsettling curiosity. While the others saw primitive chaos, he saw something else. The sheer volume of information was overwhelming, yes, but within the noise there were threads of staggering complexity, mathematical proofs that danced on the edge of concordance understanding. Philosophical concepts that spoke of a species at war with its own nature, a duality of creation and destruction that was both terrifying and beautiful. They chronicled their own history with brutal honesty, detailing wars and atrocities that would have shamed any other known species into eternal silence. Yet they did not hide it. They broadcast it as a warning, a lesson, a testament. "They are not hiding their weaknesses," Valerius said, his voice a soft chime that cut through the murmuring. "They are displaying their scars." The military delegate from the insectoid CHT-Cal Dominion clicked his mandibles in agitation. "Scars do not stop a Cathar dreadnought. Their world will be consumed, and the Imperium will be strengthened by its resources. We should send envoys and offer them sanctuary in exchange for their servitude. Their population can serve as a labor caste. It is a mercy." "A mercy that would enslave them," Valerius countered, the light within him hardening. "We cannot descend to such tactics. If we are to be a beacon of civilization, we must act like one, even at the precipice of our own extinction." He turned his attention back to the Vex. "Have they responded to our presence? Do they know we are watching?" "They know," the Vex confirmed. A new image appeared in the holographic display. It was a single, sleek vessel impossibly black against the starfield. It was a stark contrast to the clunky, functional designs the rest of their ships seemed to employ. This one was different. It was shaped like a blade, and it emitted no energy signature, no drive plume, no radiation. It simply sat in the void, a sliver of perfect darkness, positioned between the human colony and the advancing Cathar fleet. This vessel appeared shortly after our deep range sensor arrays focused on their system. It has not moved. It has not hailed us. It is simply observing. Its technological profile is a contradiction. It appears to be both inert and possessing a power core of unimaginable density. Our analysts are confounded. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. The raw fear of the Cathar was now mingled with a new, more subtle apprehension. The humans were not behaving as a primitive species should. A cornered animal was supposed to lash out, to flee, to cry for help. These humans had sent a single, silent ship to face a fleet that had shattered star systems. It was an act of madness, or a demonstration of a confidence so profound it bordered on the divine. "What is its designation?" the Glypton delegate demanded. "The humans broadcast a single, repeating identifier for the vessel," the Vex replied, its synthesized voice holding, for the first time, a trace of what might have been wonder. "They call it the Tranquility." The name hung in the air, a paradox that defied every law of military strategy the Concordance had ever known. A ship named Tranquility sent to face the embodiment of cosmic violence. Valerius felt the 1,000 fractured rainbows in his core coalesce into a single, piercing beam of white light. The Concordance was facing a choice, not just between fighting and fleeing, but between the known, honorable path of self-destruction and a new, utterly alien path into the unknown. He had spent his long life studying the cycles of history, the rise and fall of empires. All of them, without exception, fell because they were unable to adapt to a reality that fell outside their understanding. They broke because they could not bend. "We will not offer them sanctuary or servitude," Valerius announced, his voice resonating with newfound authority. "And we will not yet unleash the Grand Armada. We will do what we have always done. We will seek to understand." He turned to the Vex. "Open a channel to the human vessel. Use the formal diplomatic protocols. We will speak to them. We will see what kind of soul resides within this vessel of contradictions." The Vex hesitated, a rare sign of uncertainty. "High Counselor, their chaotic broadcast suggests they may not understand our protocols. They may interpret a formal hail as a sign of aggression. Their history is rife with such misunderstandings." "Then we will take that risk," Valerius stated, the light of his being resolute. "For to shy away from it is to admit that our own protocols, our own civilization, has already failed. Send the hail. Let us see who stands guard at the edge of the human soul." The order was given, and across the silent chamber, 1,000 delegates held their collective breath, their gaze fixed on the image of the lone, black ship. They were an ancient, powerful coalition on the verge of annihilation, and their last, best hope might just lie with a young, chaotic species they had dismissed as little more than cosmic dust, a species that sent a ship named Tranquility to await the coming of the storm. The response from the human vessel was as unnerving as its silence. There was no immediate reply, no automated acknowledgement, no flurry of encrypted handshakes. For a period of time that felt agonizingly long to the Hyperware Council members, there was nothing. The Glypton delegate began to vibrate with frustration, a low growl emanating from his rocky form. They mock us. They are primitives playing at being gods, and they spit on our gesture of diplomacy. But Valerius remained still, his focus absolute. He sensed this was not mockery, it was deliberation, it was assessment. The humans were not reacting, they were thinking. Then the channel opened. It was not a flood of data or a formal diplomatic greeting. It was a single, clear image that filled the central holoprojector. A man. He was seated in what appeared to be the command chair of his vessel, though the room around him was sparse, almost monastic. It was dimly lit, with no flashing consoles or frantic crew members. There was only the man, the chair, and the starfield visible through a viewport behind him. He was older than the life expectancy data on humans had suggested was common. His face was a roadmap of lines etched by time and experience, but his eyes were clear and startlingly calm. He wore a simple, dark uniform devoid of rank insignia or ceremonial decoration. He was not flanked by guards or advisors. He was utterly alone. "This is Admiral Kalen of the Terran Coalition vessel Tranquility," he said. His voice was deep and measured, and to the astonishment of the entire concordance, he spoke their primary trade language perfectly without the aid of a translator. The syntax was flawless, the accent non-existent. "We acknowledge your hail, High Counselor Valerius of the Xylos Concordance. We have been expecting you." The statement sent a fresh wave of shock through the chamber. Expecting them? The Concordance had only become aware of humanity's existence a mere fraction of a cycle ago. "Admiral," Valerius began, his own voice a carefully modulated chime of diplomacy, "your presence in this sector is unexpected. You are positioned directly in the path of an imminent hostile force. We wish to offer a warning." Admiral Kalen offered a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "We are aware of the Cathar Imperium. We have been studying them. Their biology, their hive mind structure, their methods of consumption. They are a fascinating, if tragic, example of unchecked biological imperative." There was no fear in his voice. He spoke of the Crimson Tide as a biologist might speak of a subject under a microscope. It was this detachment, this profound and unnerving calm, that was more terrifying than any show of force could have been. "Fascinating," the Glypton delegate boomed, unable to contain himself, his voice patched into the diplomatic channel against all protocol. "They have scoured a dozen of our worlds. They have consumed billions. They are not a tragedy. They are an apocalypse." Kalen's gaze did not waver. He turned his head slightly as if he could see the Glypton delegate standing in the chamber light years away. "An apocalypse is an ending. The Cathar are not an ending. They are a cycle, a hungry, violent, and inefficient one. Cycles can be broken." This was the core of it, Valerius realized. The Concordance saw the Cathar as an existential threat to be met with force. The humans saw them as a problem to be solved. The philosophical gulf between the two perspectives was as wide as the galaxy itself. "And you believe your single vessel can break this cycle?" Valerius asked, his curiosity overriding his caution. "The Tranquility. The name is a statement of intent, is it not?" "It is a reminder," Kalen corrected gently, "of the state one must achieve before one can act with true clarity. We learned this lesson at great cost." He paused, and the silence that followed was heavy with unspoken history. "You see us as primitives. Our technology appears crude. Our expansion has been slow. This is by design. Our greatest advancements are not in the mechanics of our engines or the yield of our weapons. They are here." He tapped his temple with a single finger. "In our understanding of systems, biological, sociological, cosmological, we nearly annihilated ourselves because we built weapons more powerful than our wisdom. So we stopped. We turned inward. We studied the Pat. RNS, the Cathar are just another pattern, a simple one at that." A wave of disbelief and indignation washed through the chamber. This human, this representative of a species that had barely learned to leave its own planet, was lecturing them on wisdom. The CHTCal delegate hissed, a sound of dry leaves skittering across stone. "Words, you offer us empty philosophy while a galactic scourge bears down on you. What is your solution, human? Do you intend to talk the Cathar to death?" Admiral Kalen's expression remained unchanged, but a flicker of something, patience perhaps, or a deep-seated weariness entered his eyes. Talk is a tool, but not the one required here. The Cathar function as a singular entity, a hive mind directed by a series of queen progenitors. Their aggression is not a choice. It is a biological command. You cannot reason with a command. You cannot destroy it with force, as it will simply be reissued by the next queen in the hierarchy. To defeat the Cathar, you must interrupt the signal itself. We have tried, the Vex interjected, its synthesized voice cutting through the noise. Our most advanced electronic warfare suites have failed. The psychic frequencies of their hive mind are too complex, too alien. You are trying to jam a signal, Kalen explained, his tone shifting into that of a lecturer. You are adding more noise to an already chaotic system. You should not be trying to block the signal. You should be trying to change it. You must introduce a new, more compelling command. He gestured to the empty space in his command center. A holographic display shimmered into existence, but it was not a star chart or a tactical grid. It was a complex, multi-layered waveform, a visual representation of a biological signal of immense complexity. This is the core command of the Cathar hive mind, the imperative to consume, to expand, to replicate. It is a broadcast of pure hunger. Then Kalen overlaid a second waveform. It was simpler, more elegant, and it resonated at a harmonic frequency that seemed to calm the first, to soothe its jagged, aggressive peaks into gentle, rolling curves. And this, he said, is a signal of satiation, of dormancy, a biological command to enter a state of deep hibernation, not to die, but to sleep, to dream, to wait for a new stimulus, a new purpose. Valerius stared at the harmonic wave, a profound sense of awe washing over him. It was not a weapon. It was a lullaby for a species of monsters. You can project this into their hive mind. The Tranquility is not a warship in the way you understand it, Kalen said. Its primary systems are not weapon emitters. They are resonance projectors. We do not fire missiles, we broadcast concepts. The ship's entire hull is a focused antenna, capable of weaving a signal into the very fabric of spacetime, allowing it to propagate faster than light and permeate any known form of shielding. We can sing this lullaby directly into the minds of every Cathar queen simultaneously. The grand chamber was utterly silent. The concept was so alien, so profoundly outside their understanding of conflict that it left them speechless. They had spent generations perfecting weapons of unimaginable destruction, only to be told that the answer was not a sword but a song. It was humbling. It was terrifying. Why? Valerius finally asked, the question a soft chime of pure wonder. Why would you do this for us? We are strangers to you. Admiral Kalen's calm expression finally softened, and for the first time, Valerius saw the immense age and sorrow that lay behind his eyes. Our own history is a litany of violence. We have been the Cathar. We have warred over resources, over ideology, over fear of the other. We pushed our world and ourselves to the brink of extinction. We only survived because we learned to see the enemy not as a monster to be slain, but as a part of a broken system that needed to be mended. We look at the Cathar and we do not see an enemy. We see a reflection of our own past, a past we have a sacred duty to prevent others from repeating if we can. He looked directly at Valerius, his gaze piercing and direct. We are not offering you a weapon, High Counselor. We are offering you a different way to win, not by destroying your enemy, but by rendering them harmless. The choice of whether to accept that offer is yours. The holoprojector faded, leaving the chamber once again bathed in its own golden light. But the atmosphere had changed. The fear was still there, but it was now overshadowed by a profound and unsettling awe. The humans were not primitives. They were philosophers who had weaponized enlightenment. They had suffered, they had fallen, and they had risen again, not by building stronger walls, but by achieving a deeper understanding. They were not warriors of the flesh, but warriors of the soul. And their quiet admiral, the man who commanded the Tranquility, was their emissary. The debate was over. The Concordance had spent cycles looking for a weapon powerful enough to save them. And the humans had just revealed that the most powerful force in the universe was not a planet killer or a starbreaker, but a precisely targeted act of empathy. Valerius knew, with a certainty that resonated to his very core, that the galaxy had just changed forever. The age of brute force was over. The age of tranquility had begun. The decision of the Concordance, once made, was unanimous. The fear and arrogance that had clouded their judgment dissolved in the face of the humans' staggering proposal. Fleets were mobilized, not for a final, glorious battle, but for a delicate and unprecedented operation. The Grand Armada, its world-breaking weapons silenced, was to act as a shield, to hold the Cathar's attention and absorb their initial, frenzied assault, buying precious time for the Tranquility. It was a strategy of sacrifice, of trust. one that ran counter to every military doctrine the Concordance had ever conceived. Yet they committed to it fully. Valerius found himself on the bridge of his own flagship, the Stellarch's Resolve, a vessel of polished silver and radiant energy, watching as the vast armada of Concordance ships arranged themselves into a protective formation around the single, impossibly black human vessel. It was like a school of luminous leviathans, guarding a single, silent seed of hope. Admiral Kalen remained in contact, his face a calm anchor in the storm of pre-conflict activity. He did not issue commands or demands. He simply provided data, projections, and a quiet, reassuring presence. He guided their fleet placements with the gentle precision of a master gardener tending to his plants, suggesting subtle shifts in formation that would minimize casualties and maximize the time they could endure the Cathar onslaught. He spoke of gravitational lensing and temporal sinks as casually as one might discuss the weather, instructing the Concordance fleet on how to manipulate local spacetime to blunt the force of the Cathar's kinetic and plasma weaponry. It became clear that even the humans' primitive understanding of physics was centuries ahead of their own. They had not just learned the rules of the universe, they had learned how to gently persuade them to bend. The Crimson Tide is translating from hyperspace, the Vex observer on Valerius's bridge announced, its synthesized voice flat, yet the data it displayed was a scream. A wound tore open in the fabric of reality, and from it poured the stuff of nightmares. The Cathar fleet was not a collection of ships, it was a swarm, writhing organic masses of chitin and sinew, pulsing with a malevolent crimson light. They shrieked into the void, not with sound, but with waves of pure psychic rage that washed over the Concordance crews, instilling a primal terror that no amount of training could fully suppress. They were a living ocean of hunger, and they crashed upon the shores of the Concordance fleet with suicidal abandon. The battle, if it could be called that, was a maelstrom of light and fury. Concordance shields, powered by contained singularities, flared and buckled under the relentless assault. Ships of elegant design and ancient lineage were torn asunder by biological battering rams and torrents of corrosive plasma. The void filled with the silent, blossoming flowers of dying stars and shattered hopes. The Glypton fleet, true to their nature, met the tide head-on, their blocky, asteroid-like ships forming a bulwark of stone and fire. They fought and died with a terrible, unyielding courage, their sacrifice buying the precious moments Kalen had requested. Through it all, the tranquility remained at the center, motionless, untouched, an eye of perfect calm in a hurricane of destruction. Admiral, Valerius transmitted, his own ship shuddering from a nearby impact that sent a tremor through his crystalline form. Our flank is collapsing. The CHTCal are being overwhelmed. We cannot hold for much longer. Your people have shown a courage that will be remembered for eternity, High Counselor, Kalen's voice replied, still impossibly serene. Their sacrifice has not been in vain. We have gathered enough data. We have mapped the complete psychic architecture of the hive mind. We are ready. Please advise your fleet commanders to hold their positions for just a moment longer. It was the longest moment of Valerius's life. He watched as a CHTCal broodship, a vessel that carried the unhatched future of an entire generation, was swarmed by Cathar monstrosities, its energy signature winking out in a final, defiant flash. He felt the grief and rage of 1,000 species crying out for vengeance. And yet he held. He trusted the human. He trusted in the promise of a different way. Then it began. The tranquility did not fire a single shot. Instead, it began to glow. A soft, ethereal silver light emanated from its black hull, a light that did not illuminate but seemed to soak into the darkness of space itself. A low, resonant hum filled the calm channels, a sound that was not quite a sound but a feeling, a vibration that resonated deep within the core of every living being, human and Xylan alike. It was the sound of Kalen's lullaby. The resonance wave propagated outwards, not as a destructive blast, but as a gentle, pervasive ripple in reality. It passed through the Concordance ships without effect, a ghost of pure concept. But when it touched the Cathar, the effect was instantaneous and absolute. The psychic shriek of rage and hunger that had been battering their minds simply stopped. The relentless, suicidal charge faltered. The Cathar vessels, from the smallest fighter drone to the most colossal dreadnought, ceased their attack. Their crimson plasma vents dimmed. Their biological engines quieted. Across the entire battlefield, the Crimson Tide came to a complete, silent halt. They floated in the void, no longer a swarm of monsters, but a placid, dormant fleet. The signal of endless hunger had been replaced by a signal of profound, unshakable peace. The lullaby had worked. They were not dead. They were sleeping. A wave of stunned, disbelieving silence washed over the Concordance fleet. The war was over. It had been won not with a bang, but with a whisper. Cheers began to erupt on 1,000 bridges, a cacophony of joy and relief from dozens of different species. Valerius felt a surge of emotion so powerful it threatened to shatter his crystalline form, gratitude, or hope for the future so bright it was almost blinding. He opened a channel to the tranquility. Admiral Kalen, there are no words in any of our languages to express our gratitude. You have saved us. You have saved our civilization, and you have done so without forcing us to sacrifice our souls. It is not a day for thanks, High Counselor, Kalen's voice replied, but something had changed. The serenity was still there, but it was now laced with a new, subtle urgency. It is a day for vigilance. The resonance wave was louder than we intended. The psychic energy released by the simultaneous calming of so many Cathar minds has created an echo, a beacon. Before Valerius could ask what he meant, a new alert blared across the bridge of the Stellark's resolve. It was a sensor reading so impossible, so far outside the known parameters of physics, that the ship's Vex analyst had to reboot its own core logic systems to process it. Something was coming, not through hyperspace, but from a dimension that lay beneath it, a subreality that no known science had ever postulated. A hole was being torn in the universe, not with the brute force of a Cathar translation, but with the chilling, geometric precision of a surgeon's scalpel. From this perfect circular tear in spacetime, an object emerged. It was vast, dwarfing even the largest of the dormant Cathar dreadnoughts. Its shape was a paradox, a shifting, crystalline lattice of impossible angles that seemed to occupy multiple dimensions at once. It was not a ship. It was a piece of sentient mathematics given physical form. It radiated no heat, no energy, no radiation. It radiated only an overwhelming, soul-crushing sense of judgment. As it fully emerged, a voice spoke, not through comm systems, but directly inside the mind of every single living being in the sector. The voice was ancient, cold, and as vast as the void between galaxies. We have observed the anomaly. The prey species known as Cathar, scheduled for purgation, has been forced into a state of NON violence. This is a violation of the natural order. The cycle of predator and prey is a universal constant, essential for the PRUNING of galactic branches. Your intervention is unacceptable. The Glypton delegate, his mind reeling from the psychic intrusion, managed to broadcast a single, sputtering question into the command network. What is it? It was Admiral Kalen who answered, his voice grim, the first hint of true strain entering his tone. It is a concept my people have theorized about, a fear whispered in our most advanced cosmological models. We call them regulators, galactic gardeners, beings or systems that enforce a certain set of cosmic laws. He looked out from his view screen not at the Concordance fleet, but at the crystalline entity. I believe we have just met one of its agents, one of the Nova judges. The entity's voice boomed in their minds once more, ignoring Kalen's words as one would ignore the chirping of an insect. The Cathar Imperium has been JUDGED. Their uncontrolled consumption was a cancer. Their erasure was DEEMED necessary. Your method of pacification is an unforeseen complication. It preserves the cancer, leaving it fallow to spread again. Furthermore, your species. A corona of terrifying energy, brighter than a sun, began to form around the crystalline lattice. It was the light of a star being born and dying in the same instant, a nova. And it was being prepared as a weapon. The judgment is therefore AMENDED. The Cathar cancer and the unnatural intervention that preserved IT will be sterilized. This entire sector will be PURGED. Equilibrium will be restored. Panic, cold, and absolute seized the Concordance fleet. They had survived their apocalypse only to be faced with a god. Their weapons were toys, their shields were paper. This was not an enemy to be fought. This was a law of nature to be endured. They were facing extinction, delivered by a being that saw the death of a star system as little more than cosmic housekeeping. But on the bridge of the tranquility, Admiral Kalen did not panic. He stood up from his chair, his face set in a look of profound, solemn resolution. He was a warship warrior. That title, Valerius now understood, was not about fighting fleets of ships. It was about facing impossible choices. He had faced the crimson rage of the Cathar without fear. Now he would face the searing light of a Nova judge. He turned to his console and opened a private, focused channel, not to the Concordance, but directly to the impossible entity before them. The final act was not a battle, but a debate at the edge of oblivion. The Nova, a sphere of incandescent energy that pulsed with the power to unmake worlds, was held in abeyance, its light casting the entire sector in a ghostly, apocalyptic glow. The crystalline judge waited, its immense consciousness focused on the single, tiny human who dared to address it. Within every mind in the Concordance fleet, the conversation unfolded, a silent testament to a confrontation between a nascent species and a cosmic absolute. "You speak of natural order and universal constants," Kalen's voice began, not a broadcast, but a focused thought, precise and sharp as a scalpel. "Your function is to maintain equilibrium by pruning aggression, a laudable if brutal goal, but your assessment is based on an incomplete data set. You have observed the cycle of predator and prey for eons. You have not observed a species that has consciously transcended it." "Transcendence is an illusion," the judge's mental voice boomed, a wave of pure, cold logic. "All biological life is bound by the imperative to survive and replicate. Given enough time, all species either consume their environment or are consumed by another. This is the law. The Cathar are an example of the former. Your intervention merely delays the inevitable." "The law is only as complete as its observations," Kalen countered, his own thoughts weaving a complex tapestry of history and philosophy. He projected images from his mind directly to the judge, not of weapons, but of human history. He showed it the wars, the plagues, the famines. He showed it cities of bone and fields of fire, humanity at its most Cathar-like, consuming and destroying itself with a ferocity that even the Crimson Tide might have admired. He showed it the crimson of humanity's own soul. "We were you, we were the Cathar. We burned our own world, poisoned our own nest. We were on the verge of self-purgation, a judgment we were about to execute upon ourselves." He then shifted the projection. He showed it the moment of change, a scientist tending to a single revived plant in a radiation-scarred wasteland, a politician from a warring nation laying down his arms to aid a former enemy, an artist painting a mural of hope on the wall of a ruin. He showed the judge the slow, agonizing, multi-generational process of humanity turning inward, of waging a war not against each other, but against their own worst instincts. "You see destruction as a solution," Kalen's thought stream continued, gaining power and conviction. "We learned it is a failure of imagination. Our temporal and conceptual tools are not weapons to break the laws of physics. They are instruments born of that internal struggle. We learned to manipulate time not to build a better weapon, but because we needed to understand the consequences of our actions before we made them. We learned to project concepts because we discovered that the only way to truly defeat an enemy is to offer them a better idea. We did not kill the Cathar. We gave them the one thing they never had, a choice, the option of peace." There was a pause, a millisecond of cosmic silence from the judge that felt like an eternity. The nova surrounding it flickered, its light wavering as if in uncertainty. "Your species is an anomaly," the judge conceded, its voice losing a fraction of its absolute certainty. "Your path of development is atypical. You have internalized the predator-prey dynamic and forged it into a tool for self-regulation. This is unprecedented." "We are not an anomaly," Kalen corrected gently. "We are proof of a new variable, consciousness, the ability not just to follow the laws of the universe but to understand them, and through understanding to introduce new possibilities. You are a gardener, you say. You prune the branches that grow will. That threaten the health of the tree. But have you ever considered teaching a branch how to grow correctly? Have you considered grafting? We are not here to break your rules. We are here to suggest an amendment." The weight of Kalen's argument settled over the void. He was not pleading for his life or the lives of the Concordance. He was not threatening or bargaining. He was appealing to the judge's own core function, logic. He was offering it a more efficient, more elegant solution to the problem it was designed to solve. Erasure was simple. Education was complex, but its results were permanent. "I am a Warship warrior," Kalen stated, and for the first time, Valerius and the Concordance understood the profound truth of that title. "The war I fought was against the Crimson Tide within my own species. The enemy I defeated was the part of myself that would choose destruction over understanding. I do not fear the Cathar because I know the beast that drives them. And I do not fear you, Nova Judge, because I understand the logic that compels you. Fear is the mind killer. It is the engine of the very chaos you seek to control. We are offering you an alternative, an alliance. Let us be your new variable. Let us be the gardeners who tend to the branches, so you need only watch over the health of the entire forest." The Nova of Judgment did not fire. Slowly, with a majestic and terrible grace, the sphere of stellar energy collapsed back into the crystalline entity, the light folding in on itself until it was gone. The sector was plunged back into the soft, dim light of its distant stars. The judge remained, silent and vast, its impossible form seeming to contemplate a question that had not been asked in a billion years. The human variable will be integrated, the voice finally announced, and it was no longer a judgment but a statement of fact. Your proposal is logically sound, more efficient. The experiment will be permitted. Your species will serve as arbiters for this sector. You will be responsible for the dormant Cathar. You will guide others. This is your new function. Your test is no longer survival. It is responsibility. The judge then did something that shattered every remaining preconception of what it was. The crystalline lattice at its heart unfolded, revealing a swirling vortex of light, a gateway that did not lead to the black of hyperspace, but to a place of shimmering, untold potential. It was a tear in the map, a door to a new, unexplored wing of the Galactic mansion. The way is open. The old constants no longer apply, create a new order. With that final pronouncement, the judge folded in on itself, its multidimensional form collapsing into a single point of light before vanishing from reality as cleanly as it had arrived. It left behind two things, a fleet of sleeping monsters and a gateway to a future no one had ever imagined. On the bridge of the Stellarch's resolve, Valeria stood in stunned silence, the refracted light within his core now a steady, brilliant, and peaceful white. He looked from the dormant Cathar fleet to the shimmering gateway, and then to the small, black ship that had changed the course of history. He thought of the human admiral, the quiet man who had faced down two separate apocalypses, one of rage and one of logic, with nothing but understanding as his shield. The legend was born in that moment, a story that would be told for 1,000 generations across 1,000 worlds. The story of the Warship warrior who feared no crimson tide of mindless rage, nor the purifying fire of a Nova judge. He was a warrior whose greatest victory was not in conquering his enemies, but in convincing them, and the gods themselves, that there was a better way to live. The future was terrifying and uncertain, but for the first time in a very long time, it was not an ending. It was a beginning, and at the dawn of this new age stood humanity, no longer the primitives, no longer the anomaly, but the calm, logical, and deeply ethical architects of a new tranquility.